Ending Life Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to episode 41 of the Clacks Women for Indie podcast. And that beautiful piece of music is copyright-free music from YouTube called Traveller. If you listened to last week's podcast, you'll know that we spent the entire episode in discussion with Peter Rolfe, our media psychologist. And if you didn't manage to catch our podcast on Indie Live Radio, you can get it on the podcast channel Scottish Independence Podcasts, yes, Cowell, or on the Indie Live Radio YouTube channel. We've got our own playlist, so you can get it there. And it's well worth a listen. It was fascinating listening to Peter Rolfe. And in particular, the thing that struck us was that there isn't a lot of time. We need to start fighting back if we're going to win the propaganda war. So we identified immediately things that we could be doing almost as soon as we came off the Zoom call. And since then, we have been exploring the world of making films on cameras and adding soundtracks and music and subtitles and posting them online, posting them on YouTube, posting them on Facebook. And it's been very interesting to learn. What we've done with the support of Indie Live Radio is we have created a playlist on the Indie Live Radio YouTube channel, which is called Twa Minute Blethers. As we make these little 2-minute or often less than 2-minute video clips, which we're spreading around the internet as best we can, trying to get outside the bubble, trying to get away from the people who are of the same opinion as us and start finding some common ground to engage with people who don't necessarily share our opinions, but who might be open to the discussion. So we've been experimenting with short films, some of which have bits of political commentary in them. Some of them don't. Some of them are just clips of the scenery as we wander around, or little snatches of history, which are quite interesting, I think, and are actually getting quite a lot of response on some of the channels that we've posted them on. But every second or third film, we are taking the opportunity to drop in a little bit of casual political commentary to try and make it seem a commonplace attitude. And it is actually a commonplace attitude. Lynn went for an evening walk around Alloa along what's called the Wagon Way and produced a little film for us, which I'm just going to play the audio from that. If you want to see the film, do. It's a very interesting piece of film and it's on the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to find it. But I'm just going to play the audio so you get a feel for how we're dropping little snatches of political content in amongst something that's actually quite interesting.
I'm out for a wee evening stroll in Alloa. This is the Alloa Wagon Way. First built in 1760s, and it was to help transport coal from Sochi down to the harbour. Oh, look at that lovely buddleia. It's amazing how plants get everywhere. I don't know if that's growing over the wall or behind the wall. Some of them disperse their seeds by wind, others explode their seeds and leave them to get on for themselves, a bit like Boris Johnson, I suppose. Anyway, this wagon way served Alloa really well. There was a glassworks that were built in 1750. Initially, that's what the coal was going to, and then it went on for further trading. I'm in the tunnel now. You can see me coming out. I'm coming out towards the post office. But yeah, the tracks were initially wooden, didn't last very long, about 20 years. So in 1785, they relayed the track, made them a bit more heavy duty. They used foreign fir trees and they plated them with Swedish iron. So even several hundred years ago, Scotland, we were trading with other European nations, and you can see possibly just ahead of me is down to the glassworks. You can see the path kind of ends here. It would have gone on further back in the day. The glassworks been in existence from 1750, and the craftsmen there were actually trained by craftsmen that came from Bohemia in the Czech Republic. Lots of great links across the continent. Amazing wee country Scotland is. But it's a cracking evening here in Alla. There you can see the glassworks there. And heading down towards the post office. I'm going to go off and enjoy my walk this sunny evening.
So I'm sure you get the idea from that of what we're trying to do. And we would love it if other people would do the same thing in your own localities and send the film clips into us either send them to Clacks Women for Indie via our Facebook page or on Twitter, or you could send them into Indie Live Radio via their Facebook page or Twitter, or use the email fiona@indielive.radio. And that'll get to me, and we will upload them onto the YouTube channel, and you can also share them widely on social media. And let's just see if we can get a narrative coming from the grassroots that's positive about Scotland, that's positive about our links with the rest of the world, that makes clear our attitude to Westminster, but reinforces all the good things about Scotland. And if we can get that message rippling through the social media in a very subtle way, it's not badged as indie, it's just ordinary people having conversations. So having started with these little films, our next attempt is to be going on to something slightly more scripted, conversational kind of film. So I'll bring you some updates on that in next week's podcast. We'll let you know how we got on. But give it a go and share it with us, and let's get something going here. One of the great things about the pandemic, the silver lining, if you like, is that we have suddenly all had to embrace the benefits of new technology, and things that we would have been zooming around the country or around the world, attending face to face, we've had to find other ways of doing it. And this is where human ingenuity saves the day yet again. So our next item, we're going to hear from Anne, who is a university lecturer and is going to tell us about a conference that she was involved in organising and attending. And I think it's a lovely example of being faced with an apparently insurmountable problem and then just completely reimagining how it can be solved. And I think you'll enjoy this.
Hello, my name is Anne Tierney. I live in Tullabuddy and I am a lecturer at Heriot-Watt University. So my job is to make sure that the lecturers in the university are supported when it comes to teaching and learning. So I help them develop their teaching skills. This has been quite important recently because of the pandemic. So mainly my job at the moment is to help them develop their skills with online learning. But I posted something on Facebook earlier in the week and people were quite interested in it. And so I'm doing a podcast about it. And that is a 72-hour online conference that I was part of last week for teaching and learning in higher education. The organisation itself is called Improving University Teaching. It's an annual conference. It's been going on for 45 years. Well, this year was going to be its 45th celebration. We were planning on going to Padua in Italy, but of course that part of Italy was the epicentre of the Italian pandemic. And so at the beginning of the year in February, it looked like we weren't going to be able to go to Italy, although at that point people were still hopeful that things were going to change. Then it moved to March, the UK locked down, other countries in Europe locked down, and it looked increasingly like we weren't going to be able to go to Italy for the conference. So what are we going to do? We have academics from all over the world who want to come and share what they do and learn from other people, and there was nowhere to go. A lot of conferences this year were cancelled for obvious reasons. But we decided we would actually hold the conference online. That's quite an easy thing to do. Everybody knows about Zoom these days. Everybody can use Zoom. There are other online conferencing tools that we could use as well. And we all use them for work. So that wasn't really going to be a problem. But the real problem for us was the time zone difference. We would have delegates and presenters coming from all over the world, and the problem is when it's daytime in Europe, it's the middle of the night in Australia, so it's quite difficult to be able to go to a conference when it's in the middle of the night. So what we decided we would do, because we were keen on having live sessions so that people could talk to one another, rather than having recorded sessions where you would just go and watch it like you would watch a video, we decided to have a 72-hour non-stop live conference. So the model was a bit like New Year's Eve, when you start with the fireworks in Australia and then every hour you work backwards west. And we did that for 3 days. So we worked in 3 teams. There was an Australian team, and that was Prue and her colleagues, Kelly and Philip. And they did the Australian sessions, which were the first sessions in each of the days. Then it moved to Europe, the Middle East and Africa, and that team was me and my colleague Janina, who's in Germany. Unfortunately, I wasn't well on the first day, so I had to ask out a colleague in Glasgow, Kim, to take my place, and she did, and that was great. I was really grateful for that. So after the Australian sessions, the European sessions, we then moved on to America, so the Americas and the Caribbean, and we had a team of American moderators there. We had Noella, who is in Toledo, and we had Jim, who's actually the conference president, and he is in Boston. So we had 3 days of presentations and discussions. We had about 25 people in each of the sessions, so around about 70 people altogether at the conference, which was really quite good. We had planned sessions during the working day, but also some early sessions and late sessions which overlapped the working day in the different time zones, hoping that people from the different time zones would actually get a chance to meet one another. What actually happened in reality was that people stayed up late and got up early and joined in the sessions in the different time zones. Me, for example, the first day when I wasn't all that well, I started to get better in the evening, and so I thought I would just check in on the American sessions. So instead of sitting at home watching TV, I joined in and spoke to some friends. At the end of the conference as well, I really wanted to go and see the Australians, and so what I did then was went to bed, had a bit of a nap, and then got up at 1 o'clock in the morning and joined them for an hour. I couldn't do it for any longer because I was too tired, but at least it gave me the chance to speak to them and see what they were talking about. So the topic of the conference is always about supporting students, and that's really what we're thinking about now, is what we're going to do for students coming back in September. So anybody who's listening who has a son or a daughter at university, or who is going to university themselves, we are working very hard to make sure that you'll still be able to learn in a supportive environment. And so part of what we did for these 3 days was talk about the different responses that the different universities and the different countries have. And in that way, we could support one another. If anybody had a good idea, then we would be able to take that back to our own university so that we could then implement it. We also talked a lot about well-being and support for students, and also well-being and support for each other as well, because we're all stuck at home, we're all trying to do our job, we know that things are difficult, and we just want what's best for our students. And so these 3 days, we shared these stories, how we learned how to teach online, how we got help from our colleagues to do that. And we shared those stories between all the different countries. If I can just tell you, the people that came to the conference were from Scotland, from Ireland, from Italy, from Germany, Belgium, Nigeria, South Africa, Australia, Canada, America, Israel, Austria, Singapore and Switzerland. So we had a lot of international conversations, we had a lot of supporting one another, we told each other about the terrible things, that were happening when lockdown started and different decisions that governments were making. We compared one another's coronavirus figures. And we also gave each other a bit of hope that come September, we'll actually manage to get new students into our universities. We'll get our students back again. We'll get our students learning, and we'll hope that they haven't been too disrupted by all of the things that are going on. I'm really quite hopeful for the start of the year, especially in Scotland. I like to think that we've managed to keep our cases really quite low at the moment, and we're still managing to do that. So cases are low and deaths are low, and that's always something good to look forward to and something good to pin your hopes to. So I'm really quite grateful about that and hope that the coming year is going to be a good one. So that was our 72-hour conference. I think we were all exhausted at the end of it because it really was non-stop. Just as one session was ending, the next session would take over. So it was like a 3-day relay race. So it began in Australia and it finished in America. Thank you very much.
Sticking with the theme of online conferences and adapting the way we do things, I have come across a flyer for a conference. I'm saying conference, it's really an online event. Quite an ambitious and quite an imaginative online event, and it's called Enough, as in we've had enough, presumably. And it's the 21st, 22nd and 23rd of August. It's designed to reinvigorate the campaign for Scottish independence, and it is described as an open forum for campaigners across the independence movement. It will be taking place across 2 innovative online event platforms. Enough will create an environment which will facilitate discussion and debate. So day 1 will be about how to campaign, day 2 will be about how to win, and day 3 will be about the winning policies. So independence supporting organisations, political parties, groups and individuals will be invited to create their own content, and it will act as a destination site for the Scottish independence movement. So that sounds really interesting, doesn't it? The objectives for the conference are to embolden the campaign for Scottish independence, create an opportunity for campaigners to meet, coordinate and to plan, to build an active community, create an environment for new ideas and approaches, to break down barriers and to demonstrate the opportunities of online events to the independence movement. And the organisers are looking for supporting organisations to promote the event and take part in it, provide speakers and moderators. It's a not-for-profit event, and it's being put on by Gallus Events, who are an events management company with 25 years plus experience. The director, William Thompson, is a recognised industry thought leader and passionate about Scottish independence. So that sounds like a very interesting event. It doesn't actually say how to get involved at this stage, but I know Independence Live have been invited, as have Indie Live Radio, and I think we would be very keen to take part. I don't know whether Women for Indie Clacks will want to perhaps think about taking part as well. I think the idea is you can have your own kind of online stall, so you can be available for discussions with people if they want to speak to you about, network or whatever. But I think there'll be a lot more to come about this event. So as we find out more, we'll bring you updates. But in the meantime, if you mark those dates in your diary, the 21st, 22nd and 23rd of August, for an online event called Enough, and look forward to finding out more about this one. It sounds very interesting. I've been kind of busy this week, so I haven't really been catching much of the news or what's going on in the world of politics. But thanks mainly to Twitter and YouTube, I have caught a couple of little snippets which seem to sum the general position up. First of all, we have The First Minister putting John Lamont and then Jackson Carlaw in their places.
But on the back of this, John Lamont, the Tory MP for the Borders, says this shows, and I quote him, how negligent the SNP were on care homes. Would you care to respond to that?
Actually, part of me just wants to treat that comment with the contempt I think it deserves. And John Lamont is a Member of Parliament in the House of Commons. He will have no doubt heard his own Conservative colleagues grappling with the same issues. And there is, in terms of the issues around care homes and hospitals and trying to minimise delayed discharge to protect older people from being in hospitals when there might have been COVID, we were taking the same kinds of decisions. So I just think that is an attempt to politicise something that is both inappropriate, and actually anybody with even a scrap of knowledge about this, and I don't know whether that includes John Lamont or not, would know that just doesn't bear any scrutiny whatsoever.
Now, the decision extends to all Spanish destinations, including the Canary Islands, which includes Gran Canaria, Lanzarote, Tenerife, and then on to La Gomera, and the Balearic Islands, which includes Mallorca, Menorca, and Ibiza, all of which have a very low incidence of COVID, in some cases significantly lower than Scotland. Will she examine whether these popular destinations could be added to her list of quarantine countries now? And I think such a measure would be welcome by many Scots who do understand the need to balance and the actions she took arising from the incidents in mainland Spain, with the risk here just as much as we do. First Minister.
I was starting to wonder there whether Jackson Carlaw was outlining his own summer holiday plans there. I also was particularly interested in what appeared to be a proposition from Jackson Carlaw, that where there are different prevalence rates within a different country, then different arrangements around travel should apply. And perhaps that is something that Jackson Carlaw may want to reflect on in different circumstances in future. Recognising, of course, that right now Scotland has a prevalent rate of this virus that is several times, and based on the most recent data, we have 5 times lower than the rest of the UK.
And just for political balance, here's the best they can rustle up from the country next door as Boris Johnson spies money and tries not to say contract tasting.
At a local level, combined with contact tracing.
Well, I hope that's nice and clear. And talking of nice and clear, it seems only right to give Nicola the last word on this section. Here she is putting Andrew Marr's gas in a peep with a fantastic response to another of these misleading questions.
About care homes in Scotland. Overall, the story in Scotland has been relatively positive compared to other places. But in care homes, you had a particular problem, and you were still discharging people a week or 6 days after they'd stopped in England without testing. I think 1,300 people were discharged into Scottish care homes from Scottish hospitals in March and April, and mandatory testing wasn't introduced until the end of, the 21st of April, towards the end of April. Now, you've said that you have some doubts about that looking back. Can you actually apologise for that policy and admit, frankly, now that that was a mistake?
I regret and apologise for every death from this. I don't think it is appropriate for any politician to be defensive about this, but what I absolutely refute is that there was some particular problem in Scotland, or that we didn't take great care. So from the issue of discharge from hospital into care homes, that was following a policy of clinical risk assessment and strict guidance in place in care homes. The situation in care homes, not just in Scotland but across the UK and the world, has been awful, and I will be the first person to concede that. But what I absolutely do not accept is that we have a particular problem. If you look at excess deaths, and I discussed this with you the last time I was on the programme, if you look at excess deaths overall in care homes, they are lower in Scotland than in England, but we ascribe more of them to COVID. So I think more than 70% of excess deaths in care homes in Scotland have been attributed to COVID, where the figure is around 50% in England, which raises the question, what are those excess deaths in England attributable to, if not COVID? So we are recording these, I think, more rigorously, rather than having more care home deaths, as some people have been suggesting.
Now we're going to pop into the virtual coffee shop and see what's the talk of the steamy today.
The good thing is we can travel to Austria now, because that's one of the air bridges. So that's why when you said Innsbruck, I thought you must have just jumped in a plane early this morning and got there and
in spirit. Yeah. No, that's actually because the thing that I was doing last week, we had quite a big group of academics from Innsbruck, and so we were just chatting and laughing about different things, and somebody said, put the golden Stachel on as your background, and so I had a photograph of that and I stuck it up, and they were all going, oh, and then I just put up the background of Austria. None of the people from Innsbruck could recognise that as Innsbruck. They were going, where is that? That looks lovely. Where is that? I was going, well, it's Innsbruck.
I hope you like my mug. Make mine a coffee, no milk, no sugar. But then it says, proud to be Scottish in my name. They gave me that for my birthday this year, just before lockdown. So I sit online, especially if I think it might be somebody who's kind of not into independence. They go, oh, I like your mug. Where did you get that?
Speaking of old movies, Fiona, I don't know if you saw it on Instagram, but I did a wee piece that included Alien.
Ooh, no, I've not looked today. So, fab.
But I was thinking of you when I was drawing it.
You're thinking of me when you were drawing an alien. Thank you very much.
Has anybody else got signs that Clacks Council have put up saying keep your 2 metre distance and all that?
Yeah, big red COVID ones.
Yeah. Jelly has.
Yeah, $1.
Yeah, they've got them in Alloa as well. They've got signs up at the kind of cycle paths. It says COVID-19. Be considerate of other path users or something like that.
It's like they've got them along the main street in Tillacucci around the shops. Yeah. But in Dollar they don't have them, or they didn't have them.
No,
I was in Dollar.
they do. There's some in Dollar on the main street, just along from the co-op, opposite in front of the optician, and there's also all the way along the cycle track.
Well, I never noticed those ones next to the optician. I thought it was maybe because the people of Tillacucci were being more inclined to...
I think it's everywhere. I don't think they're singling you out.
Yeah. No, they've done it in Alloa, the town centre in Alloa. It wouldn't
bother me if they were singling a place out because...
But in Alloa, they've got on all the lampposts, they've got the kind of banners that say 2 metres, face coverings, and then on the ground, I can't remember who Neil was saying last week, he'd gone down to the garage to get something repaired, and they had gone into work in the morning to discover these white circles with 2 metres and the 2 wee feet in them and 2 metres, and then behind it another wee circle with 2 metres, and they didn't even know it was getting done. So lots of places, lots of shops and things have had all these markings put outside them. Because see, the butchers in Alloa, it's like an executioner's queue waiting for Aikens the butcher, but there's only so far that you can actually, the queue then goes up and joins in with the boots queue when people were queuing outside to get into the chemist as well. And because Aikens got 2 sides to it, they're now wanting you to queue depending on which side of the butchers you want to go into. So I'm like, oh, what if you wanted to go to both sides of the butchers? Have you got to go and queue for one and then come out and queue for the other?
Lob it over.
Catch the sausages.
The Nike and Adidas shops at Sterling Mills since they reopened, the queues there are just horrendous.
Yeah, why? Who desperately needs sports gear that urgently that they're prepared to queue round the block in 2 sports shops?
Now, the stores, when they were about to reopen, they apparently advertised all these special deals they were having. So the first day they opened, inundated.
My friend's son works in the Nike store at Tillacucci, and the first day back, they didn't get any breaks whatsoever. You know, the queue was out, and then they had to kind of stop the queue and say, look, we shut at this time, so if you're this far back, you're not going to get in.
Has anybody else got the new layout of Facebook? Has it rolled out yet?
Yes.
I think horrible.
I undid it. I only ever look at Facebook on my phone actually, and I undid the new version.
Yeah, the new Facebook is hideous, but I guess we'll get... It is quicker for uploading videos, I have to say, than the previous one, but then you can't find anything again, so...
I hunted out I've got a wee Clackmannanshire guide to the area,
Ooh.
and I thought that might be quite good for coming up with places if we want to do filming in. Just as a prompt.
That one on Clacks Online has had about 50 views, which is quite interesting.
I started that wee conversation with it came onto it, because I thought, and Neil's going, well, why are you doing that? I said, well, Lorraine always goes on about algorithms. If there's more comments on something, it seems to get punted higher up the kind of page. So when other people go on, they'll see it and they might look at it. But I mean, absolutely beautiful, Fiona. You're wee subtle. Oh, look, Dominic Cummings, Pond Scum, and then back onto the path. And I thought people might have missed that, or they just kind of like, you know, they just kind of go over it, but they've heard it. They've heard you say Pond Scum and Dominic Cummings in the same like sentence, and they'll make that association. You know, it's like subliminal messaging. So everywhere we go, we can only find places where there's Pond Scum. So we can say, oh look, Pond Scum, Dominic Cummings.
Dog shit or bull crap.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if they'd post it because I've no idea what Clacks Online is like in terms of political attitude. So I wasn't sure if that was going to be too subtle or not.
It's run by a guy originally from Clackmannan who lives in Watford now.
Little short films with you sort of in a set up around a table with a crystal ball and predicting the future of Scotland. They'd be brilliant.
I could do it from my garden loo. I could sit on the toilet in my toilet tent in the garden and do predictions. I could take my fishing float along, use it as a crystal ball and do readings.
Yes, what I see in 3 years' time, Dollar is going to be part of an independent.
Scotland, yeah. With doing the wee videos, you want to have, if you can get a wee sort of hook that gets people into watching them, something funny, so that they're there for the humour, and while they're getting the humour, they're getting the message as well. But if you're looking at this wee book, I mean, it just the opening page, you know, you've obviously got the Ochil Hills, Castle Campbell, Alva Glen, Carden Bridge, Clackmannan Tower, there's Alloa Tower, there's Cambus Bridge. I mean, Menstrie, I thought the wee fox in Menstrie got up at Fish Cross. And there's even things like, it doesn't have to just be like sort of old historical things. Could it be things like the Mountain Rescue?
Of course. It's just something that badges it in a location so people realise that we're talking to them.
Gartmore Dam.
Yeah.
There's the coffee shop there and everything.
Some of the times when I've been out on my walk, I come along the footpath, cycle path between Alva and Tillicoochee, and there's actually seats along that path that mention the funding from the EDF. Now, nobody will just pick up that's European Development Fund, and maybe things like that could be kind of incorporated.
I've drafted one. The idea is to have it at Alloa Tower. I was thinking once a monument, but having written it now, it needs to be Alloa Tower really, and it's more about actually something that Neil posted on recently, which is, you know, English folk coming up from England to settle in Scotland, of which I am obviously one. And so giving a bit of background on that, but obviously, you know, the reasons behind that, but without shoving it down people's faces. It is meant to be conversational. So I'm giving that draft to Lynn to put her kind of bits together. I think one of the challenges is keeping it to 2 minutes. You know, it's very easy to kind of write something broader than have to edit it right back down.
I don't think there's a problem if it goes to 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, when you think the channels we've actually got available to us, it's Facebook, so you can put whatever length you think people will stay interested, really. We've also got the YouTube channel on Indie Life, which is where I've stashed all mine, and that's where we can put them up there. And actually, the ones that are there have got variations in length, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. If it's 3 minutes or 4 minutes, that'll be fine. I think if you're getting longer than that, I don't know, it might be that there's a cut-off point where people lose interest, or it might be that actually they're quite happy to listen to you talk for 20 minutes. I don't know. So
one thing that struck me is I invariably, it's all very well looking at a video,
But if you're in a room with other people, you don't want to interrupt their evening by having the volume over. So if it's just the strapline of what's being said.
Good thinking. Yes, now that you can put subtitles on, and actually I was thinking about that because a lot of the stuff we've put on that YouTube channel is audio from the radio, and I thought if you're deaf, it's of no interest to you at all, you know, because you can't hear it. But you can actually put subtitles on, which I haven't tried yet, so I don't know how hard or easy it is, but definitely I think that was a recommendation I saw somewhere else as well, that a lot of people will watch with the sound off. So good
good
idea.
If they're in a work situation or whatever, it then means they can still pick up on it without with people being aware that they are listening in.
The next thing, but I think right now, if we just get started and just practice doing some, and what we'll get, we get feedback quite quickly on YouTube and Facebook, the amount of attention it gets, the number of shares they get, whether they get any likes.
I also thought as well, if you could get somebody that lives in that area that maybe knows people to have a conversation with them, because then that's the wee kind of hook, and people will watch it because they'll go, oh, that's Elaine that lives down the road for us, I wonder what she's saying.
That's great.
You know.
Really, the fact that we all live in different parts of Clackmannanshire, even that would be a good starting point, wouldn't it? If we all just did a bit relevant to the place where we live, and try and think what's the issue specific to that location that they would pick up on or that would resonate with people, and just experiment.
I don't know. Moved, lived there 10 years and barely had a conversation with any of the neighbours. When I look back and think, that's quite interesting.
But see now, because of lockdown, I started the WhatsApp group in the street, we now know, because more people are around as well, you were getting to see them.
You know, a little film about your oleo food distribution, and maybe a conversation with people about food waste and how the community's coming together.
The other thing that happened was one of the guys came on, he said, our granddaughter's now outgrown her car seat. Is there anybody that could use a car seat? He said, and all we'd ask is you make a donation to, and he gave his charity, I think it was like Forth Valley Veterans or something like that. And it turned out the girl just up the road from him, who's had a baby about 4 weeks ago, is looking for a car seat. So she's gone down and taken that car seat. So it's probably saved her a small fortune and not having to buy a brand new baby seat. So all these things are really good.
Yes, and they're not indie specific, they're just sort of things of interest in the location for topics that anybody would be interested in. So that kind of thing I think would be perfect.
If you could share some of Linda's stuff on her my little bit of piece as well, couldn't you? Because there are so many people that are now growing their own, and she's obviously sharing that knowledge, so that's another kind of community link in, and a really good ecological as well.
Yep, good idea.
Joy, you saying the number of people that have been buying greenhouses now.
I was just about to point out that, because it's extraordinary. I supply for a whole range of different manufacturers, and all of them have got increase. Some as much as a third, which is extraordinary.
Wow.
But as people are at home, people are wanting to grow their own food. I personally think I don't think they're thinking of it like this, but I think you have to think for the future. There is going to be food insecurity.
Oh, do you know, that's a perfect topic as well, isn't it? Because that's something that everybody can relate to. And you could lead that on to the agriculture bill, the power grab, you know, the food standards legislation, all that kind of stuff.
The supermarkets have interestingly come forward and said we're not happy with chlorinated chicken as well. So, you know, you're right, so right. You know, and there's so many who are not politically active, but who have suddenly got really motivated by sign up for which? They're anxious about chlorinated chicken, and middle classes are suddenly tetchy because they might be getting poisoned food.
We've still got the Brexit cliff edge to come, and we'll all have been running down our stockpiles when we originally went into lockdown, and we're going to have to start thinking about getting them back up again. Only now we've probably got a much better idea of what kind of things should be in those stockpiles.
We put the little shed store in the garden yesterday. It's been set up now, so...
Are there channels that we could be saving things onto that are outside the indie bubble. And things like Mumsnet occurred to me, and I've no idea, I've never tried sharing videos on those, but really what we're trying to do is subtly shift just the low level discussion to bring in some of these ideas and try and counteract all the messaging they're getting through the former channels. We probably need to be getting onto forums and groups that aren't the ones we would naturally frequent. So that Clacks Online, I've been on that, but I've never actually used it. But Mumsnet, I think, has got a huge following. Is anybody on that?
I'm out of it because they were sharing shite. It was just.
I've gone to it before now. If you're wanting, what's the word? An opinion on a product or something, because it's an extraordinary source for that. But
I've never seen anything like that. It's mainly, it's discussions on products and things, but a lot of it's got a bit clickbaity. It's got a bit headliney with you click on this, and then what you're reading is actually not as sensationalistic, but it's got a lot of people that are then, it becomes quite judgmental. Part of the problem is that whole, you're parenting the wrong way, or you're not doing what you should be as a mother, and it's that kind of aggro that it starts.
Saga? I hate to say it, it's that sort of age, you and me, dear. Massive birthdays this year. Well, they do have a sort of forum, so it's possible to then, dare I say, dump stuff there.
And that is also the demographic that we still need to shift.
Yeah.
There are some more local mums groups that might be more useful for tapping into.
What are they?
Well, there's things like Tilly Mums. There's an actual Tilly Mums group. I think there's one in Alloa as well. I watched a clip of Sense and Sensibility the other day. I thought I can relate a lot more to this than I used to, because there's that sense of being, you are just in one house. You do keep your distance just through etiquette from other people. You might go down into the village to go and get your supplies through the week, but actually that you have minimal contact with other people, and these whole ideas of travelling to other places, that would be done months in advance. My next ball is not scheduled for a while, so it's just the comparisons I was thinking of.
That's interesting, isn't it? It's like, the phrase, it's knocked us back to the Stone Age. Well, it's clearly knocked us back to the, what were they, Edwardian?
Napoleonic.
Are we all up for spending the week trying to knock up whatever little video conversations we can? And if you post them on Facebook, I'll be able to pick them up and post them on the YouTube channel. And I've set up a playlist called Twa Minute Blethers, as Lynn had suggested last week. And I'm just posting in there and hoping that somebody outside our circle at some point will also post something in there. But I think the more we can put in there. Yeah. The other thing we've just put in, Lorraine's, her new poem, Ghost Hills. We've put it to music and we've added pictures of the Ochils as well on it, and it's beautiful. I'm absolutely blown away with how well, what a lovely piece of poetry it is. And I've stuck that up on the 12 Minute Blethers and in our open mic poetry spot, so if you want to have a look.
You've done an extraordinary job.
You start in the morning, you go, I don't know how to do X, and by the end of the day, bang, it's up on the internet. You just sort of learn through necessity and experimentation.
I can vouch for that. I would say if it went for the fact that the laptop is, our laptop is being particularly temperamental.
And just to finish off this week, I'm going to share Lorraine's poem that we mentioned on the Zoom chat there. It's called The Ghost Hills. We did play it on our Sunday Poetry and Jazz Hour, but it's a beautiful poem and I think it deserves a second playing. So here you go. This is Lorraine Sinclair, The Ghost Hills.
In awe of the Ochils. For centuries they have inspired the locals, the beautiful magical ghost hills. Our ancestors roamed there, a long, long time ago, hunted deer, sheltered from storms, and hid from many a foe. The Picts and the Gaels, freedom fighters as well. Oh, if only we knew what stories they could tell. Of battles hard fought and won, of Scottish soldiers who camped there, our heroes, every one. In awe of the Ochils, the beautiful greenest ghost house. Wallace based his army here and spied upon Stirling town, plotting when best to bring his warriors down. I swear, on a dark winter's night, the Ochils echoes cries of freedom, of brave men running to the fight. In the midst of summer and blooming purple heather, I imagine Jacobites being cleansed in good Scottish weather. In love with the Ochils, unchanged since time began, I look at them and wonder and awe, and admire the view our ancestors saw. I'm sure on a cool autumn evening I can hear birds tweet codes from your era, used as you navigated strange landscapes, often in fear and terror. In the greenest of spring, what a wonderful sight. I oft remember the pagans who worshipped in your glens at night. In awe of the Ochils, the most beautiful, greenest, mystical, magical ghost house.
Oh, I love that. And if you want to have a look at the illustrated version of that poem, it's on the Indie Live Radio YouTube channel. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all next time. Bye now.